All right, guys. So I am here with Marissa today. She is the amazing dog mom of Miss Maisie, who is Maisie the Barn Hippo on Instagram, and the recent addition of little Andy, who isn't so little anymore. But Maisie and Andy, mostly Maisie, has gained over 100,000 followers on Instagram, and she's best known for her chosen method of communication, the woo. And if you guys haven't already, I would highly recommend going and following Maisie on Instagram. Again, it's Maisie the Barn Hippo. And before we get talking about Maisie and we're going to talk about tips for integrating multiple species in the household like you have, and also some information on dog breeding and why it's important to choose a reputable breeder. We'll get to all that. But first, I think it's going to be really interesting to have your followers get to know the voice behind the camera, that gets Maisie to woo, like, what is that, Maisie? So first things first, I don't think a lot of people know, what do you do for work?
So I work for a large animal veterinary practice. I work for 5 veterinarians, and I've been there for quite a few years. And before that, I was a groom for a show barn for hunter jumper horses. And then before that, I worked in construction for many, many years. So it's great being in the animal world, and actually getting to dive in and, hear all the good stuff that the vets get to see out there. We love it. And it comes very helpful with Maisie and all her issues.
Oh, May.
Right.
And so if that being said, with all the job that you're doing now and everything, it'll be interesting to know. I gotta know, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I think it would be, gosh, that's a really good one. Probably see the future, and kind of be like, so what's going on here? Is this medication going to really work for her? Or are we going to be back to square one?
Most people would say see the future to bet on sports or something. You're like, well, this medication.
Medical issues for my dog. Is this going to work? What are we going for?
Oh, that's such a dog mom thing to say.
Right? Well, it's like my whole life revolves around her and Andy and, all the other critters. So it's pretty much like any kind of help I can get for the future, throw it at me because I would greatly appreciate it.
That would be very, very much appreciated, definitely,
right?
From any sort of pet parent standpoint. It's like, what's going to happen with this guy?
Am I good? Am I doing the right thing here, or am I barking?
So it's just always a money and time.
Exactly.
And so, you have a lot of animals around. Do you live on the farm?
So no, I actually live on acreage, but my horses are kept at my friend's house, across town. But in the area that I'm in, it is very country. Almost everybody in the neighborhood has some form of livestock or dogs, cats. There's probably about 100 horses in the neighborhood easily.
I think I saw a llama recently.
Yes, the neighbor across the street has a llama and 3 alpacas and some sheep. And then one of the other neighbors has alpacas and llamas, and they're all over the place. And then my horses are kept somewhere else, with goats and stuff. But when I worked at the barn, that's where Maisie got to go every day. So she became super familiar with horses, from the get-go. And it was amazing the way that she just acclimated herself to just going with the flow and not caring about them. And, she wasn't just not very smart about not walking in front of them or under them, but, she just kind of rolls with it. And
did the horses kind of get to know her and just say oh yeah, that's just Maisie?
Yeah, and she gives off a very non-threatening vibe. Maisie is very chill and very easygoing. So there's nothing, that kind of makes them get on edge or anything like that. With my own horses, I give her a little bit more freedom than she, had at my old work. So she gets to kind of run around them and bark and, woo and stuff like that, which, yeah. And they kind of look at her like, the hell? Okay, whatever, and just kind of do their own thing. But she gives her vibe. It's just so chill that nothing, I haven't come across one animal that gets upset with her around because she's just
really cool.
Goes with the flow. Yeah. I've never had a dog like her. She is just amazing.
You might be able to help me with something that I've always wondered. And I know it's I could probably have looked it up already and know this, but figured I'd ask someone who'd really know. Yeah. How do you tell the difference between a llama and alpaca?
So llamas have a little bit more of a sassy expression. Their ears go a little longer than alpaca, and they have a slightly different body shape than the alpaca. But alpaca looks like a toy, pretty much. They're very like poofy, and like they just look very like, I want to squeeze you. You know, you're so little and floofy. Where llamas kind of have a type of an expression, you know, like, what's up? Do I need to squeeze your back? Because I will, you know. But it's funny because the llama across the street, you know, she kind of oversees. They're used as herd guardians and flock guardians around here. So, you know, she'll kind of keep an eye out. And then you've got like the three musketeers that come run into the fence like, hey guys, you know, and they're just like poofy and like they're just smaller. And, you know, there's subtle differences. And once you kind of see a few of them back and forth, you kind of pick up on it. But mainly llamas tend to be a little bit bigger and a little more of a sassy, like, what's up type of an expression. At least
you said something about like flock guardians. That was the llama?
yeah, they use them to guard like goats and sheep flocks and stuff like that against predators, you know, coyotes, that type of a thing. And they're really good.
Because they're mean.
That, and they give off like, they're very attentive. So if they hear anything out of the ordinary, they kind of sound their alarm, which sounds very weird. You have to Google it. It sounds like some kind of weird geese type thing. Like the first time I heard the neighbors, I was like, is there a geese flock somewhere? Like I was looking around and then I looked up and the thing's looking over the fence at me and Maisie and Andy. And I'm like, it's you? That noise came from you? What the hell?
It's like, what?
No, it was so bizarre. It was like, and I didn't know what it was. So I'm looking around like, what the hell was that noise? You know, and I see the llama just looking over the fence, like eyeballing, like, okay, so I guess that was you. Very strange, but all right. Like, never heard anything like that.
It's always interesting to hear what noises come out of animals.
Yeah, it's very, there's a few of them. And then the wild critters, you know, that are running around. You hear the foxes screaming and you're like, the hell is that noise?
I've heard like a raccoon scream before and it literally sounded like a woman was being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I almost called the police.
Right?
Like...
And peacocks. They sound like a woman crying for help. Mm-hmm. It's weird. You know, when you hear a bunch of them, you're like, the hell? Oh, it's the peacocks down the neighborhood. Okay. Yeah.
That's a pretty cool, fun place to live. I mean, wow, you got a lot going on.
Awesome. I love my neighborhood. Absolutely love it. And it's great for the animals too, because everybody's so friendly, you know, and kind of, you know, you see everybody when you're walking and hi, that type of a thing. So it's great for them.
That's
I really
awesome.
love that. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, they get to go walking around and have fun and explore. That's great, man. So and so like they all know that Maisie woos, all your neighbors and stuff, I assume, like kind of know her.
Some of them do. Some aren't quite familiar with, you know, her special skills, but my landlord is aware and, you know, make sure everybody knows, you know, oh, did she know that Maisie woos? And they're like, what? I'm like, yes, she's special. She has her own language. She talks. Yeah.
So let's say if because we always like she talks, but let's say she was granted the ability to talk about one topic, like one subject for one day, really talk to you. What do you think she would talk about?
I think like just how happy she is. You know, like this dog, like she is so happy despite all the crap that she's gone through and the myriad of health issues that she's constantly battling. I mean, she's seriously like, even when she's feeling crappy, you know, she'll perk up and be like, okay, you want to do that? Like, this dog is just so stupidly happy and you can't help but just, you know, feel the joy when you're around her. And, you know, like she's just so silly and, you know, and she's always trying to figure out a way to like make you laugh. Like even when she's kind of down, you know, she'll kind of grab a toy in a funny way and then kind of look at you like, yeah. You want to get this from me? And you're like, no, you can have it. I know you don't feel good. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to give it up. You know, it's like, she's just so cute, you know, and if I'm like, you know, feeling kind of down, I'll be petting her and then I'll go to stop. And she does this thing where she'll like raise her arm, you know, and kind of paw you. I'm like,
excuse me.
I'm like, I'm done. This is like the best thing ever. Like you just totally fixed every kind of day, you know, she's got stubby little arms and then she tries to wave it at you and you're like, oh, little T-Rex arms, you've got nothing there. You're so short, you know. But
breakfast will jump up on the counter and like try to grab stuff and I'm like, look at you can't get it. You can't get it.
Big head, little arms. Totally how they are. but it's just like everything, like everything we do, we go for a car ride. She's super stoked. She's looking out the window, it's like fixing her snack. She's like, all right, what are we doing? We go to the beach. She's stoked about that. Like, I just think that from where she came to where she is now, I think she knows how lucky she is, you know what I mean? And what a change that she was given in life, to start off kind of crappy, but then end the way that every dog should be cared for and, loved and worshipped.
All the good stuff, all the feels.
Make me all soft inside.
But now, if you could choose to talk about whatever topic, and you guys could still talk for one day, but like you're like, hey, I get to choose. What would you talk about?
I would just want to know, what does she want? Like, what would make her the happiest dog ever? Like, what could I do to make your life the best that it could possibly be? Like, do you want to go to the beach every weekend? Do you want to go for walks down the street? Do you want to have pancakes every Saturday for sure? Like, what do you want, Maze? You want me to return Andy? That won't happen, but let me know. He's not going anywhere, but you can tell me if you want him gone. It's just like
her face and reaction to him sometimes. She's just like,
she sits there like, seriously? Really? You're watching this and you're allowing it to happen? Cool, Mom. Thanks.
And he doesn't care. He's like, whatever, I'm having fun.
No, he does not care. She'll grab his toy and walk away from it, and he'll do circles yelling at her, barking, and she's like, that's right, I took it, and keeps on doing her thing. And he's just like, all right, I'll go chew the stick, and he'll run off the other direction. I'm like, good choice, buddy, because she's not giving it back. Like, her mouth, it's not coming out of. Like, good luck.
Their personalities, man. Like, it's like pretty easy to see like why you've gained over 100,000 followers. I mean, there's a reason for it. Some accounts, it's like, how do they get that? It's the name or it's who they are, but there's a reason. It's extremely entertaining. She's one of my favorite, like probably my favorite dog to follow, just because of the antics. And her and Andy, and even like when George, they were just so great to follow. And it's just a source of joy every day. So it's really cool that, you would believe and you would want to talk to her about just what would make things happy now. It doesn't matter what was before. It's just now. It's really cool.
And that's the whole reason I did this account. It's like there's so much outside stuff going on that's, can just really bring you down. And so it's like, come to Maisie's page, laugh, look at her woo, look at this ridiculousness that I have to deal with every single day. Look at the stuff she destroys, look at her and Jorge, that type of a thing. Because it's like, that's what I look to, in certain Instagram accounts like Breakfast, and other ones where I'm like, oh, look at this big fat face. I just want to squeeze it, and it's like, it makes you smile and happy. And you're like, okay, this is what Instagram is for, type of a thing. It's supposed to make you smile, give you an escape,
And speaking of which, it definitely does. But when you're dealing with 100,000 people, sometimes things can happen. So what is the one thing that you want people to hear, like the piece of advice or something that they should always take into account when commenting or messaging a big account like Maisie's?
Not everything you see is, really how it is. Like, I get a lot of comments about Maisie's physical appearance, which I get, because she's changed a lot in the last few months, and it's not something that I like, but I know that it's not going to change unless, the medication that she's on is stopped, which is not going to happen. So, people will say like, oh, she's so skinny or this and that. And it's like, I totally get it. But you also have to realize that she's on a really hardcore regimen of medication right now. Same with like comments about her ears being cropped, why would you do that? And it's like, I didn't. She came to me like this. Do I care if her ears are cropped? Nope. I think she's freaking adorable either way. Would I do it myself? Nope. But somebody else did, so I'm just gonna take her along and love her to pieces, because
just gotta roll with it.
Yeah, I'm just like, whatever, dude. Ears, no ears, it's cool. Like, you're still Maisie, But a lot of people don't really understand that, like, not everything is presented, because sometimes people don't want to go into the detail every single time. So, just kind of take everything with a grain of salt and be like, okay, cool. But, this dog is obviously well cared for, so there must be something else going on, because obviously that's not neglect. that type of thing. But,
Yeah.
Giving constant updates, on medical things kind of gets tiring. So, unless there's something large or significant happening, you just kind of let it go and roll with it type of a thing. But it can end up, where they end up looking a little bit different, or, training goes, differently than what you would think, or that type of a thing. So not everything is exactly how it is. And maybe, scroll back a few posts and see if there's something mentioned about the topic that you're
Just enjoy the woos.
Exactly. But otherwise, just buckle up for the woos and ride them out. It's
I
fantastic.
love it. Buckle up for the woos. And so what would you say is probably like the funniest message or comment that just kind of rings true, that just really made you laugh?
It was yours when you told me that you had Maisie's woo ringtone, and it was out in public, and somebody started looking around like, is Maisie in San Diego? I was dying. I'm like, that's the funniest freaking thing I've ever heard, that, like, first of all, somebody even knew, like, what Maisie's voice is, and then happened to hear it on your phone, and it's like, oh, you don't know? Well, I am Mr. Breakfast. That's my man. Like, this is his girlfriend. That type of a thing.
It was too crazy. I mean, it's a very unique woo, because, like, I've never heard any dog do that or anything similar to it. Like, they howled and stuff, but her, like, woo, 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 and it started ringing, and I was like, oh, yay. And I started copying, because it was the first time that someone called my phone having it. And it was like a table right behind me, and we're outside in this kind of quiet area, but my phone is pretty loud, apparently. And they're like, oh my God, that's Maisie, that's Maisie. And they're looking around and, standing up and kind of looking around. I was like, sorry, hey.
Hilarious. No, that is seriously, like, so funny to me. Like, I love it. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then there've been a few people, where their kids totally get a kick out of Maisie, or like, they'll visit their parents in the hospital, and the parents be like, so where's the dog that woos? Like, can I see videos? And I'm like, here, let me send you some more, and I'll just, like, DM them some more videos. I'm like, here, go show your mom this, or go show your dad, or, some followers, their kids have really liked Maisie. And so I'll send them a couple pictures, and they're like, can we print these out? I'm like, yes, of course, and they're like, oh, she put them up by your bedside. I'm like, that's adorable. Like, I
really
love
cute.
it. Yeah,
that's
I just
really
love
cute.
that Maisie can, spread the love type of a thing, and that she kind of gets recognition, or it's really cool. I love that she can do that.
That's really awesome. That's definitely, like, probably the most impactful thing that I've noticed just from running the Instagram, like, Mr. Breakfast, is just the positive, like, the way that people really do truly get joy, from it, and they look forward to it, and
they connect with him. They're just like, oh my God, this little deaf, like, chunky surfing pit bull, and you're like, yes, he's fantastic. He's Breakfast. Amazing, and you're like, okay. Like, I just love being able to share that with people and be like, this is dog love and how it should be. I don't know.
And definitely with both of our dogs, they're a breed, letting people know, hey, this is a pit bull, like how great they are. So it's definitely, that's awesome. Now, her woo ringtone got recognized in public. Do you guys ever get recognized in public?
It's actually happened a couple times, which is a little strange. The first time was a few years ago, actually, at the feed store, and we were going in, and somebody was like, is that Maisie? And when you're like, yes, who are you? Why are you asking me? And they're like, oh, I follow her on Instagram. I'm like, oh yeah, that's so cool. And then a couple people will say, like, I swear I saw you in town, do you have a big white truck? And I'm like, yes, we're the two dogs hanging out the back. And they're like, yeah, I knew that was you. I'm like, yes, that was us. So it's kind of cool, and then it makes you wonder, like, well, how many other people, like, recognize her,
but don't tell you.
Yeah, and I'm just like, do I have a little celebrity in the back of my car? What's going on here?
You do, absolutely.
Yeah, does that happen with
and the fact that mostly, around San Diego, just his following is pretty big. Mostly, like, most of it is in San Diego, and there have been a few times where our old neighborhood, we'd walk down. It was kind of a road in and out of downtown, so it was pretty popularly traveled. And people would, like, have honked, and they're like, Mr. Breakfast, and they're driving down the street and stuff. Yeah. When we lived in North Park and we went to the same bar all the time, there have been a handful of times that people have stopped and they're like, oh my God, and you can hear them whispering, that's Mr. Breakfast, that's Mr. And I'm like, guys, come over, come we say hi, and they get pictures and stuff.
That
So
is
it's
so
definitely,
cool.
it's like cool because he loves it. I mean, I bet Maisie does too. Like anytime that people walk up, they're just like, yeah, pet me,
Stranger danger. It's funny
Yeah.
because she's very stranger dangers. Yeah, so she's like, if strangers come up, she kind of like, hunkers down. But when George was around, George would like to get pets from everybody. So, especially men. If anybody came over, George was like, what's up? And so Maisie would be like, hey, well, don't forget about me. I think I want to be included, So he was great. He really like kind of gave her some confidence type of a thing. Like, no, this is cool. Come up and get pets, But before, she'd fully like do the whole like kind of head down and look down and be very still. I'm like, it's okay, sweetie. Like, they're friends. They're not going to hurt you. You can be social. It's fine, type of a thing.
It's too funny. It's kind of like Breakfast and Buddha are like that because Breakfast like literally pulls me to go say hi to people, and he's looking up at him and walking, and Buddha is just kind of like, I'm like, Buddha, go say hi. Yeah. So that's interesting. They're, it's a good balance with each other. Is Andy very approachable?
He is, but I don't take them out together because he's reactive, and so she kind of he gets kind of like protective, or like she kind of eggs him on a little bit, so I walk them separate. But
the qualms of having a puppy during quarantine.
It's so great. It's just fabulous. Yeah. Like, the exact opposite of what you should be doing with a puppy. You're like,
Right, yeah.
Don't let him go up to anybody. Don't let him go up to any dogs. Keep him inside. I'm like, but that's the opposite of what I'm supposed to do.
He's socialized.
He just wants to make friends. So it's like, he wants to play and everything and see other dogs, but he sees them and just starts screaming, and pulling at the leash. And he looks like, okay, well, this dog looks crazy. I'm like, no, he just really wants to say hi. It just looks very intimidating, and we're working on that. But
yeah, he just doesn't know how to control the emotions.
Exactly. He's pretty much like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's another dog, mama, mama, mama. I'm like, I get, okay, now they're gone. See, you scared them off. Yeah. Good job, buddy. That's not what you're supposed to do. You sound like you want to eat them. Like, I'm just trying to say hi.
Do you think, because Maisie's always wooed ever since you got her, right?
Mm-hmm. That's why I adopted her.
Yeah, so you heard her and or like, I need that dog. Do you think Andy is going to pick up on it? No?
I don't think, no. I think I'm not sure if his vocal could even do it because of the way his palate is and everything. But he's more of like a screamer. He doesn't have any quietness to him. No, he screams at everything. Everything is barking, and then it escalates to like screaming at everything. And I'm like, oh God, there's nothing quiet about this dog, like at all. Like there's nothing silent. He goes from like 0 to like 1,000 in like 2 seconds. So I wish he would woo. That would be the cutest freaking thing ever with this little underbite. Oh, so
he's still young. Maybe he'll like develop his own sort of.
I'm hoping. I'm like, Maisie, enlighten the little one, like show him how it's done. And she's like, it's mine.
I think that kind of shows like how really unique, she is, like how very rare it is to have a dog that woos just like that. But even if he doesn't woo, he's still like a perfect addition, to your little pack that you have going. And you have Maisie, you have Andy, but then you have Motor and a couple of other cats, and then they're around like horses. So how do you like, and chickens,
Yeah, right.
How do you what's it like? So have you ever had any instances of there being any scuffles or anything like that?
There have been a few. So when I first brought Maisie home, I don't think she had ever really had interactions with a cat or anything before. And she would have like laser eyes, like focused to where I would physically have to turn her body to get her to look away. And even then, she'd be looking over her shoulder trying to look at him. And I'm like, dude, you're freaking them out. Like blink, like hello, type of a thing. And Motor, he was obsessed with her from the beginning. So it actually like made things a little bit tricky because she was so intense. I kept her on a tie down for the first month so she could get used to them being around, seeing them jump, run around the house, and she wouldn't be able to chase them. Motor kept going up to her, like in her face, and so she'd be like getting amped. And I'm like, Mo, you have to back up. Like she will squish you. She's not used to a dog or a cat. You have to like wait. But
Motor's basically a dog.
no, I honestly think he thinks he's a dog. Like, he gets that, cats are cool, but I think he honestly thinks he's a dog deep down inside. And so he immediately, Maisie was like, "What's the cat?" And he's like, "I'm right here. What's up? Sniff me. Check me out." And I'm like, "Oh God," and she was a little bit strong. But I had an older cat at the time, Leilani, and she was like the master. She taught dogs how to behave around cats. So it was very, very, significant that if Maisie would go running up to her, Lonnie wouldn't move. She'd just stand there. And so Maisie kind of figured out, like, oh, well, I can run up, but nothing happens. Like, she just stands there and doesn't move. There's no chase. There's nothing fun. In fact, there's a few times that Maisie got a nice claw to the face, and smack, come up too fast type of a thing. Oh yeah, no mercy. Like, Leilani did not mess around. So that was key, it's just kind of chilling it out type of a thing. And she got to learn how to be good around them. I mean, she would still get amped up around Motor in the beginning and would try and play with him, and kind of do the forward play, bow, bounce type of a thing. And Mo was like, "Oh, that's too much. Why are you up in my face?" But I mean, Maisie, for the most part, like, easy peasy. Andy, he discovered about chickens. So it's
Yeah.
totally not his fault. He was great around chickens and everything. And he happened to be sniffing under a wheelbarrow where there was a chicken, and it flew up in his face, So of course he was like, "Oh, feathers," and he grabbed the chicken. Oh yeah. He was just like super excited. He was like, "This is great." So he grabbed the chicken. Chicken starts screaming. He's like, "Oh man, the toy moves, animated.
Even better.
Freaking awesome," and I'm like, "Oh," and I'm running over there, like, grabbing him, prying his mouth open. The chicken goes running off, and he's just looking at me like, "Oh, again?" I'm like, "No, never again. Never, never, never." So luckily the chicken was okay. She had a little couple punctures. We cleaned her up and everything, and she healed. But those are the only few instances. And I think, one of the goats rammed Maisie one time. Yeah, so I keep them out of the horse area now because the goats like to ram the dogs, and I'm like, that doesn't work. Like,
Is that like a sign of play, like how they're trying to play, or is it like get the F
I'm
out?
not sure, because one of the goats that does it, she's a Nigerian dwarf, so she's really small. But I mean, I think that she's trying to intimidate May. I'm not sure, but like, I've caught her a few times, just backing up and running towards her with her head down, and like gets her in the side. I'm like, what the hell? Like, you can't do that. Macy's not
Like this tiny little goat.
Yeah, and Macy's like, "The hell," and looking at me all offended, and I'm like, "I got you, May. Let me come save you," and I carry her out, type of a thing. So I mean, for
Oh
the
my
most
gosh.
part, like, they're pretty chill. There's a few things,
Yeah.
that happen, but you just kind of gotta, be aware and be proactive, and kind of, think about things ahead of time so that it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah. I was about to ask, what are like 3 pieces of advice you have for anyone wanting to introduce a new species into a home, like new cat, new dog, anything like that?
Go slow, very slow. The longer you go, I think the more success you will have. Because if you rush things, you can inadvertently end up doing something which creates kind of like a trigger, or, some kind of reaction or behavior modification that you may not, want, and that you'll end up having to correct later. Like, let's say if you don't keep your dog on a tie down for a certain amount of time, long enough, when bringing in a new cat or bringing in a new dog, that dog may end up, getting to chase the cat once and then thinking, "Oh yeah," and then
Fun.
exactly. And so now, instead of, working with just getting used to seeing the cat, now you're also preventing chasing, and trying to work towards, that type of a thing. So it's like, if you go little by little and build it, then you're going to have a better foundation, for later on. If I would have
Yeah.
just let Maisie kind of loose in the house with the cats, it would have been mayhem. She would have been chasing them all over the place. Like, "This is amazing," but now they sleep with her, they climb all over her, they
Yeah.
run together, type of a thing. It's all about just going as slow as you can. Talk to trainers, but positive reinforcement, because you don't want anything negative with other species. Like with the goats, that type of thing, it was through the fence for a long time, and then eventually they came into the open area with the horses, then the goats rammed the dog, and that was that. But before then, everybody was getting along fine. They could, go next to each other. The dogs didn't think like, "Hey, should I chase this goat? Like, what's up?" They're just kind of like, "Oh, hey, goat." and do their thing.
Funny looking dog.
Exactly. Like, oh, you're just weird. You have hooves, not paws. Cool. That type of a thing. And, to talk to experts, and, talk to the people that have done this before, that, people who have, interspecies type thing, like what you're doing with me, like, how did you do this? Or trainers where they have multiple dogs in the household, and you're like, how did you integrate that type of a thing? Because everybody's got little tricks and tips. And sometimes if you kind of combine a few different people, you end up with a formula that works for you. Where you're like, okay, so we do a tie down in here, then outside we do this type of a situation, or like the cats will put them up here for now. Some trainers might be like, get a few more cat trees so they have better, up areas to get to.
Yeah.
Everybody kind
Feel
of has
safer.
their own. Yeah, and it's like everybody kind of has their own tips and tricks for what can work, and sometimes what works for some person might not work for the other, but it's just about kind of really doing your research and taking your time, because rushing things never works, like, ever.
Yeah. Okay. So take your time to go nice and slow before like really just kind of introducing them like fully and free and open.
Exactly.
And talk to trainers and talk to multiple like experts and trainers. Okay.
Exactly.
So those
And
are
just
three
like,
good pieces.
friends and people, that type of thing, and do a lot of reading, and that's pretty much like what I did. It's
Cool.
just like,
All right.
I talked
Yeah,
to
it seems like you have a pretty good little protocol in place. Like new dog, you do this. Andy's a little naughty chicken chaser.
Exactly. And you just have to have a lot of like, have a system, have, like a schedule type of a thing, because a lot of dogs thrive on regularity. Animals too, they like having a certain set schedule. And once you give them that kind of foundation, that gives them the confidence, like, okay, this is what we do, I know what comes next. They're not kind of always guessing. So if you just kind of lay it down, and they know certain things, like what's expected of them, then you kind of have a greater success rate in the end. Like for Andy,
Cool.
I do the NILF, nothing in life is free. He's got to work for it all, which he's not a fan of, but it works because he's so strong and stubborn. But now I make him think, it's like every time he wants something, he's got to sit, he's got to ask for it. And I'm like, yes, making a polite little man dog, give you some manners, so.
I think those are three good pieces of advice. So, go slow if you're introducing a new, species or even a new animal into the home. Go slow, talk to trainers, and have a routine set up, ready to go, and follow it. Be consistent with it. Exactly. I love that. That's really cool. And just for those of you who aren't following Maisie and who don't understand who Andy is, he is the recent addition to the home, and he's totally enamored, like the followers, with his little snaggletooth, his curled tail, hilarious, just facial expressions, and little mischievous antics, little chicken chasers and all that kind of stuff. And he does have a cleft lip and fully cleft palate, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that is the result of
crappy breeding.
Okay, and let's talk about Maisie. Speaking of breeding, she was also rescued from sort of a poor breeding situation, or a poor attempt. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, what were you gonna say?
Oh, so I was like, so kind of understandably, given your experience, your knowledge, first off, with working with animal hospitals and having dogs for so long, and then also your experience with your two most recent dogs, being the lack of poor breeding situations. Yeah. I've seen you post about unethical breeding, or just as we call them, like backyard breeders, and how important it is, to search and find legitimate, reputable breeders. And so do you feel that there's enough emphasis on educating the public in general terms about the difference between reputable and unethical breeders?
No, unfortunately not. I don't think that this is something that's talked about like at all. And if you do mention breeding, if you're in the rescue world, it's kind of like bad thing. For me, I am not against breeding. I'm totally for ethical, breeders. I'm against backyard breeders, the breeders that do it for money, the breeders that don't care about their dog's genetics, the breeders that don't care, about their dog's temperament. They just want to pump out litters, get their, kennel name out there, so they're get some kind of notoriety. And that's what's ruining dog breeding. It's like the ethical breeders that are out there doing it to better the breed, to they're doing it, to promote good temperament, good solid genetics. Those are the people that we need to support, and those are the people that are also being lumped in with these crappy breeders, and they're ending up kind of getting bashed for it. But that's the problem, is that most of the time, all we're seeing or dealing or hearing with are these backyard breeders, because they're so prolific.
I actually saw an account the other day. They're literally like this person and a pretty big following. They're praising the breeder where they got a deaf puppy, because the dog was unfortunately bred to be an exotic color bully, a platinum
You're like, we
type of
just got a
bulldog.
color.
Yeah. And it's, deafness and even cleft palate, spina bifida, things like that are the result of the rare exotic, color breeding or DNA, testing breeding, not genetic testing. And they were totally okay with it. I mean, they're like literally saying like, oh, thank you so much for doing this for us. And it almost it's a type of breed that only has maybe 1 or 2 puppies in a litter. So it almost came off as if like they requested a deaf dog. And I don't know, I don't want to like make any assumptions, but they just kept talking about how they've been wanting one for so long. And so, I mean, that right there, it's like you're praising an unethical breeding situation. And so it just kind of shows how uneducated, people are. And unfortunately, it's not their fault that they're uneducated. They don't know. But so we know that there's not enough emphasis on educating the public about the difference between the two, of like how to find them. Like, information's out there, but you're right, I don't think it's put on enough. And for another thing, what do you think about the importance of why people need to choose reputable or ethical breeders?
So when people choose, let's say they want a puppy, and you're like, okay, you're gonna get a puppy, cool, but at least pick somebody that's going to do right by their dog. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people, they'll go online or, see their friends and, oh, here's this cute little puppy, blah, 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 blah. But nobody really wants to get down to the nitty gritty and be like, okay, so you need to find a breeder that's not pumping out multiple litters a year. Yeah, I know it might suck that you can't get the dog you want this year, but if you wait a year or two, it'll be worth it, because you're going to get a dog that has, the correct health, requirements that you need, good genes, that's not going to have, later on down the line, you're doing a TPLO or, that type of stuff on something that could have been prevented, if they would have had, parents with great genetics and great hips and great legs, that type of a thing. And I just don't think that it's not put out there, because people kind of don't want to deal with it. They don't want to wait. They want to get their puppy now. They want
instant society, yeah.
It's like George, the guy that I was dating, he wanted to get a blue pit bull puppy. And I was like, that's great, but we're not going to some backyard breeder. We're going to rescue it, or you're going to end up paying a ton of money for a really good dog. And luckily, a litter happened to be born in the shelter around the same time, and we were able to adjust. Yeah, it was crazy. George's mom was brought into the shelter and gave birth the next day.
And that happens all the time. I don't think people realize how often puppies are born and available for adoption. So it's almost like, if you're going to spend the money on this dog and going to a breeder, which is, if that's what you want to do, then do it right. Spend the money now instead of on health issues later. That's not to say that all rescue dogs are, with bad genetics are going to have issues or anything like that. But yeah, so I would say, what would you say that are, like, maybe list like 1 through 5, or, just kind of list off the top of your head things of the main points that people should look out for when searching for a breeder, and how they can know whether or not that breeder is legitimate.
So you're going to want a breeder that does health testing. They're going to need to get their eyes, their heart, and their hips at a minimum checked and certified.
What about these DNA testings that some breeders are talking about?
I'm not too familiar, with all of that. Of course, doing the Embark testing on Maisie and Andy was incredible. It's given me a lot of good information, like Andy's liver levels, the normal is slightly off. So it's good to know going forward, because if you go to the vet and they're like, oh, his liver, and you're like, oh, that's actually normal. I had the genetic testing, that type of a thing. But that's not going to, give you, it'll show his genes and all that stuff, but it's not going to give you that specific dog.
So a breeder that is saying like, oh, we don't do genetic testing, but we do DNA testing to see if they carry a certain color trait, would that be a red flag to you?
I think, as long as they know, I think that would be good, because the problem was like with blues, everybody wanted, a blue pit bull, except the blue is a recessive gene. And so you're breeding these dogs recessive to recessive, and a lot of these dogs are ending up with like temperament problems, and it's not their fault. It's just because of their breeding. Blues tend to be shyer, a little more quiet. They startle easily. They have confidence problems, that type of a thing. And this is just something that people have noticed in dogs that are blue. It's just like something that's linked to the gene. So then you get these dogs that are blue to blue to blue, and like George, he was great, but he was totally blue bred, and he had a couple little issues, they weren't anything major, but it's something that you notice, in dogs that are bred specifically for color. They're not caring about the temperament, they just want the appearance. And it's like, people need to breed for temperament. That's one of the other things, it's like people need to be a little less hung up on what the dog looks like and more focused on what the dog's temperament and their brain is doing. Because it's like, if you have a badass dog that looks beautiful, but its brain isn't working right, that does nobody any good, and the dog is the one that ends up suffering at the end. But if you have a dog that's formed right in the head, you're going to be happy with that dog no matter what it looks like, because that dog is going to be with it and thinking and like connecting to you, and you're going to have something that you're able to work with, and possibly less training issues down the line type of a thing.
Definitely, because what is it like? I think 8 out of 10 or 60% of dogs that are surrendered are due to behavioral issues. So definitely, so you're saying like genetic testing for the eyes, heart, and hips. Is that what you said? And then
through the vet, and it's like they're sent off, and they take x-rays and everything, and they do blood draws, and they match it up to a standard to make sure that it falls within the standard. Like Maisie, love her to death. She has horrible hips. You know what I mean? They're barely in the sockets. Like, her heart is terrible, all this type of stuff. And it's like, these people are trying to breed her. And I'm like, Jesus, what are you trying to do? Like, pump out medical, like, freaking oddities? Like, no, don't breed her. It's just, I've gotten so many messages from people, asking about breeding her. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, absolutely not, And then some people are like, oh, well, I have a pup. It would be great for your program. I'm like, what program? And then I asked them, yeah, I'm like, what are you even talking about? And then it's like, well, do you do any testing? Yeah, they go to the vet. I'm like, no, health testing is not just going to the vet. There's certain standards, and like these people that pump out, multiple litters a year. The thing with dog breeding, if you're doing it right, you're not making money on it. If anything, you're losing money, because the mom has to go to vet constantly to get checkups, make sure everything's doing right. You got to be feeding her right. The puppies are going to need to get all, checked out by the vets, get at least their first set of shots, not all 3 before you get it type of a thing. They need to be going in and getting wormed and making sure that everything is correct. And these people that pump out, 2 to 3 litters a year, you're getting dogs that haven't had their first set of vaccinations. Who knows if the mom is being properly taken care of, that type of a thing. They're not in family homes, and the people aren't, back checking or background checking, or, just kind of sussing out who the buyers of these puppies are. They're just selling them, with no regard as to what ends up happening to these dogs. And a good breeder, they're going to specify if you're allowed to breed that dog or not, because they don't want their dog's genetics. If that dog is not, a show dog or, show worthy, they don't want that, that gene line going on, because it's not a strong line. They only want dogs that can be the best of their breed. And that's what you need to look for, is people that are actually trying to better the breed. They're not trying to make money. They want to have, 1 litter a year, if not every 2 years. They have take back contracts on their dogs. If you can't keep your puppy, that dog goes back to the breeder, no questions asked. That type of thing. Like, those breeders are making sure that their dogs never end up in shelters. They never end up in a situation that would be detrimental or harmful to them. They are there for their dogs for the life of the dog, no matter if the dog dies with them or goes to somebody else. Like, they're vested. And so many of these backyard breeders that you see, they don't care. You know, they say they do, but they don't. They're shipping out puppies at 6 weeks, you know, like people need, yeah, it's like one thing, you know, a good breeder is keeping their dogs till a minimum of 8 weeks, possibly even longer. You know, it's like, and you don't want a dog. I know some people do, you know, the cross country shipping, but for me, that's something that is a no-no. You know, I know a couple people that have, you know, purchased these designer dogs, basically mutts from across the country, had them sent over, and the dog dies in transport. And then the breeder sends another dog. And I'm like, what? Why are your first puppy died and now you're going to send a second one and hopefully the same thing doesn't happen? You know,
There
it's
was
that
recently I think it was like 50, or it might have been more. It was either 50 or 500 or something like that. It was a large amount of French Bulldog puppies that were being shipped from the Ukraine to the US and died. And
in
they were just,
Boston, right? I think
yeah,
they get stuck
they
in
were,
Boston.
they were found in a dumpster.
Yeah, it's unconscionable. Like it's absolutely like unacceptable.
Yeah. So right now we have, for anybody, you know, that's wondering, tips that they could find a legitimate breeder, or things that they should look out for a legitimate breeder. One would be the genetic testing, not DNA testing, genetic testing through a veterinary
And
office.
and get certifications. That's the main.
Certification. Okay,
Yes,
so genetic testing and certifications. There's different letters that, like OFHA is one of them, and things
exactly.
like that.
Yeah,
But that's, you know, what you need to look out for and ask for those. And how many certifications should they be looking for?
a minimum of the hips, heart, and eyes, because
Okay,
those
so
are the
minimum
things.
of 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you're going to want to make sure, you know, are you passing on blindness? You know, is our heart conditions? Are we going to have, you know, hip dysplasia going on later on, type of a thing? So these are the things that they're, you know, they're really crucial that people want to watch out for.
So that would be the first one. So at least those minimum of 3. If there's more, then there's great.
Exactly.
Get the certifications for those. And then the number of litters a year. You're saying, how many litters should they be looking for a legitimate breeder having per
I
year?
would
Not the
say,
breeder, but the dog.
yeah. I mean, honestly, from what I have heard, you know, and from what my friends that do ethical breeding do, you know, it's 1 litter a year, you know, type of a thing, maybe even one every other year. You know, the female dogs are a minimum of 2 years old, you know, they're not breeding, you know, basically puppies. You want to give your female a chance to, you know, grow a bit and get some strength and to be able to like carry the pregnancy and to be strong.
Okay, so genetic testing, maybe 1 litter a year, maybe every other year. The female, the mom, is a minimum age of 2. And one I read somewhere, they should only have so many litters. You know, they should stop breeding her by the time that she's, I think I read 4, something,
I'm
4
not
or
quite,
5.
yeah, something like
I could
that.
be wrong.
Well, yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the specifics of that, but it's like, you
Yeah,
know, you don't want a worn out dog. It's, you know, it's not right. It's not
yeah,
fair to constantly like do this to the animal, you know,
yeah,
it's not their choice, type of a thing.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
to make
Yeah.
sure that like this poor dog isn't having her body taxed year after year after year, because it does take a lot out of them, you know, to give birth and to nurse all the puppies.
Pregnancy and birth, like it's
Yeah.
kids, you know,
Well,
it's
like
a
we went to
lot.
us when I was younger, and you know these dogs look like Great Pyrenees. And when our female, you know, was nursing, I mean, she lost all her hair, and the amount of food that we fed her was insane, you know. But these dogs go through a ton of stuff. I mean, they lose their fur, they lose weight, you know, everything is going towards the puppy. So you just really have to be aware of how these breeders treat the parent dogs, you know, like puppy mills, prime
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. And so then that was the other one is so the genetic testing, number of litters per year, the age of the mother, and the environment that they're in. And then you mentioned the background checking of who's interested in purchasing.
Exactly.
That's
So
something
like
that's
good
really big.
breeders are going to have take back clauses on all their puppies, you know, no matter when or if or how it happens. If that dog ends up homeless or needs a home, those breeders take the dog back. And one of my friends who bred pit bulls did that, you know, a couple years after, you know, her litter was born, one of the puppies had to come back to her. And my friend kept her for a couple years and then ended up with one of her friends that was like, I would totally love to have her. And so that pup moved on, you know, but
Yeah.
my friend was like, yep, bring her back. ask
Yeah.
no questions, type of a
Yeah.
thing. And same with a couple other people that I know. They will take
Yeah.
back any of their puppies, no questions asked. And
No, like they don't want him in the shelter. They don't,
that
and they actually, I think they have him sign contracts, to
mhm,
say, you will bring this dog back to me, no matter
exactly.
what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a
Yes.
good breeder is going to check and make sure that the home is right for the dog. So many people I see now get Malinois, and they're fantastic dogs
They're
for the
great.
right type of person and for the right type of home. Like they're, dogs go through phases, all the dog breeds go through phase fads type of a thing. And it's like a good one is going to make sure that the lifestyle that you have fits the dog and fits the breed and fits the temperament, or nobody is going to be happy.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
then you have another dog ending up in the shelter or euthanized.
exactly like a good breeder basically wants to make a good match for everybody around. They're trying to have happy, healthy dogs, that are perfect representatives of what the breed should be. Like good breeders breed to the breed standard. So
Yeah.
many of these dogs, like Frenchies and everything, they're bred for like their big, fat, meaty heads, and they're just so squishy. But, then they end up having like birthing problems later, where most of them have to be born cesarean.
Yeah.
Same with like pit bulls. Like people breed and breed and breed, and there's so many of them, and these poor mamas, they're pumping out, 13 pup litters, and they're having to go in, and get taken care of because they've got some kind of infection, or like
Yeah.
a stuck puppy, or this type of a thing. It's like, ugh,
And I would say personally, no exotic colors.
no,
If the breeder is doing exotic colors, I don't
exactly.
care what you can tell me. I don't care what you could
Not if
say.
they're bred.
There's a reason that it's not a standard.
Mhm.
And
Like
there's a
with both.
reason, yeah, there's a reason that it's not common. It's called rare because it's a mutation and
Hmm.
it's not right. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, that's a big fad right now with bulldogs and French bulldogs, or the blue merles,
And the
the
person
things
that's
like that.
not in there, like you've got Catahoula in there somewhere, you've got some other breed, and people will be like, no, no. Same with pit bulls, and you're like, no, honey, there's something else in there because that is not a standard color. Like
Yeah.
they had years ago, I don't know, probably like 20 some odd years ago, they would have these spotted leopard hunting dogs, and it was basically a pit bull and a Catahoula mixed together, and then people would breed those with more pitties. So then you still have this merle type Catahoula color coming through the pit bulls, and they're trying to tell you, oh no, it's pure pitty, and you're like, no, no, it's
Yeah.
not. Like with
Yeah. And
Andy.
even with let's say it's, let's say it was a pure pity, it's a recessive gene that causes health issues.
Hmm.
And
Definitely.
it can be like congenital detrimental issues to where spina bifida is where their spine is not even formed all the way.
Exactly.
Their
Well,
spine
one of
is
the
not formed.
rescues like just came up with a double cleft puppy from, they got it from a vet office, and the pup's mom was cleft, and this person was purposely breeding this cleft Frenchie. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, and I'm done. Like the fact that somebody would do that on purpose is the most unethical, like disgusting thing I have ever heard of.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even Andy, like he was supposed to be a pit bull. He was dropped off at the vet office 3 days after birth because the breeder didn't realize, this puppy isn't nursing. He just noticed, wow, the puppy is smaller than all the rest. And it's like, yeah, because he can't freaking nurse. He's got a hole in his mouth, So
Yeah.
my friend was like, yeah, he's a pity. He's a pity. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, he's very chunky and pit bull-like, but I'm not sure. And
It's a
thanks.
curly tail.
Well, the funny thing is the tail is like a birth defect, I think. That has not, yeah, the tail, he has no little dog in him. He's half American Bully, and then the other half is split between Amstaff and a super mutt mix of like boxer, bulldog, Rottweiler. Yeah, really? And
Bulldog. Maybe the curl is from the bulldog because they kind of.
maybe, I'm not sure. It's very strange.
Either way, something's not right. And especially
Exactly.
like how you mentioned the breeder didn't even know that he was dying.
Yeah, like,
He didn't know.
a good, yeah, that right there will tell you that this breeder is
Yeah.
garbage, because a
Yeah.
decent breeder is going to be in there checking their pup's mouth, making
Yeah.
sure that there's nothing funky going on in there. I mean,
Yeah. And I would almost want to add they don't breed until they have homes like they can guarantee that they can have homes set up. I see a
Exactly.
lot of times, unfortunately, Craigslist, like they're good breeders, reputable breeders, but then they have these 13 puppies, and they have like they're like all 13 are available, and so it's just kind of like just mostly like anyone who's listening or watching and is listening through our rant of
Right?
everything, just remember the main points of the genetic testings and certifications: minimum of 3. The only minimum, like one litter a year, maybe every other year. When the age of the mom, when they started breeding her, and how often they breed her, of course. And the coloring, no exotic colors. The
Exactly.
environment that they're in, don't let them be breeding, if they're breeding like 5 other breeds, or 3 other female dogs are having 4 litters all at once, it's a pretty clear sign.
Exactly.
And um, I would almost say that's like, if you go through those 5 and they fail just one,
That's,
you know,
yep, moving on.
yeah,
That's the
definitely,
thing, like a
definitely.
good breeder, there's a wait list.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that's how you're going to
yeah,
know if somebody's decent, if there's a wait list, if people are like out there and using the dogs for the purpose, like
yeah,
lab breeders, like if all those dogs that a person is breeding, the labs are going to hunting homes, they're going to working homes, and they're happy, then you're kind of like, okay, this person's got a 3-year waiting list, but everybody seems to be
worth
like,
the wait.
yeah, like the dogs aren't coming back, the people are happy, the dogs look healthy, like, all right, that
Yeah,
type of thing. Like, just
yeah.
do your research, like figure out, is this somebody that I really want to support?
And so that's another, like, for my final, because I feel like we could rant about this all day. For any listeners out there, anyone who's watching or listening, that are interested in wanting to, potentially get a puppy or just learn more about it to educate themselves more, what are some ways that they can educate themselves more on the topic of differentiating between a legitimate and illegitimate breeder?
um I don't know, for me it would be like, look into the working sport of those dogs, or the working world of that particular breed, and see, who are the people that are, showing, that are having dogs that are, winning, that are, examples of the breed type of a thing. Go to like the breed pages, online, and see, who they might recommend, and just kind of like start doing some digging and be like, okay, so this group in my area, like an agility group or whatever, maybe check them out and see the dogs, and maybe talk to the people and say, hey, where'd you get your dog? That I really like how that dog moves, that type of a thing. Like,
Yeah,
do your research and kind of go into the breed groups and go into, online groups, and see, you know, who kind of has the good name, who
yeah,
doesn't. Maybe talk to like your local shelter, because sometimes they have connections to people where it's like, you want a lab, or you want a pit bull, but you want a certain line, or you want to, have health guarantees or whatever to that dog. They might know people and be like, this guy's a really good person.
because
Check.
actually pretty legitimate breeders will be, they'll actually support and help out with rescues and shelters and
Exactly.
things like that.
Exactly.
And of course, like, speaking of rescue dogs, we say that, we're happy with legitimate breeders and we support them. But of course, as everybody might not know, Maisie and Andy are proud members of Best Life Stripes team, Stripe Squad, how I like to
Yeah,
call
that's my
them. Yeah. And they do wear the 2 white stripes that are the symbol for rescue dogs on their leashes and their collars, and they look dashing so that other people can see and know that they're rescue dogs. So do you believe that it's important, Marissa, for people to know what dogs are rescues versus, what dogs do come from breeders?
Oh, yes, I definitely think so. I mean, I get compliments on Maisie all the time. Where did I get her? Where did she come from? And I'm like, she was not wanted. She was in a rescue, and there's thousands of dogs just like her sitting in shelters, just waiting for somebody to give them a chance. Show, let this pup show what their personality is, and show them how freaking rad they are. The people that had Maisie, I don't think that they knew that she wooed. Like, did they ever give her a chance to be happy and to talk and to even discover this dog? Like, how could nobody want, like, mind blowing, just absolutely mind
Yeah.
blowing. But that's the thing, is there's so many like her that are just waiting in shelters, and she came from a breeder, obviously, but it's like,
Every dog comes from a breeder somewhere,
right?
unless they
It's
were like
like
bred for their
eventually,
stray or something. But
yeah.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, so here's this, quote unquote purebred dog, that everybody loves, and she was unwanted. She would have ended up in a shelter if the rescue hadn't, picked her up, type of thing.
And
And
now
there's
she's insta
so,
famous.
yeah, right. Now she's famous. But like, there's so many like her, and all they need is just somebody to give them a chance and to let them show their personality and show this person, how cool they are. They just don't get that opportunity. And so many of them, their personalities don't come out in the shelter because they're so scared and they're shut down and they're just like, what the hell is going on? Like Maisie, she could never be in a shelter. Like, it makes me choked up thinking about it. Like, she would
Yeah.
absolutely crumble. She would not be this dog. Like, she would be
I think if you think about it, like if you think about humans, going to jail, you hear like things bark, like dogs are barking all the time. People are yelling all the time,
exactly.
new smells, new things, new this. It's all happening all the time, but we at least have that kind of frontal lobe thing that says, this is where we are, this is why it's happening. They don't have that,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
It's just like confusion and chaos for them. And so many dogs do not do well in shelter settings, especially pit bulls, the timid ones, it's like they just crumble in that. But once you get them out of that environment, they get a chance to blossom and to just grow into themselves and to show you like, dude, I'm rad. Like, let's go for a run. Let's go chase some balls. Like, this is so cool.
Let's
That,
go woo.
yeah, let's go talking. Like, woohoo. And it's like you see these stories of these dogs that have been in shelters for like 4 or 5 years. And you're like, how has this dog just managed to just maintain, and they finally get into a home and you just see like this complete transformation of this dog from, just kind of like this, like, okay, this is cool, I guess, to being laying on a couch, totally chill, just like sleeping with their person, watching TV, and they just get a chance to decompress. And that's something, that I think a lot of shelter dogs don't get too. They get adopted and then a week later they're returned because of some behavior thing. And people need to realize, like, you just need to give them a chance. Just give them a chance to relax, to figure out where they are, figure out the routine, figure out you. I mean, they don't know you, and so they usually say, 3 months is the time period from when the dog gets to fully decompress, show their personality, and you can figure out what you're working with.
And sometimes less than that. I've seen dogs
exactly.
come out after like 2 weeks, so it's really not even a long time. I know it seems like a long time. You want to cuddle them, you want to kiss them.
Right.
I would say like the most important thing is to remember to give them their space, and that petting them and cuddling on them it would only be for your benefit, not for theirs.
Exactly.
So yeah, like just let them be, let them come to you. They will eventually, dogs love. Yeah.
Well, that's the trick with Maisie. Like, she does not like when people get all up in her face and want to pet her. She pulls back. And I didn't realize this. So when I went to met her, I basically sat down on the floor and started talking to her foster mom, Amy, about her. And Maisie was just kind of like, huh? And she like scooted over to me and like sat down. I just sat there like petting her. And I didn't realize it yeah, pretty much. But it's like, I didn't realize it at the time that I had done exactly the right thing. I was just trying to sit on the floor and talk with her. But that was exactly what Maisie needed. She needs, like, I tell people, I'm like, just ignore her. Otherwise, like, she's going to give you a weird look and try and pull away from you. But I'm like, if you ignore her, she'll be your best friend in 5 minutes. And sure enough, within 5 minutes, she's, throwing her head up under their hand, trying to get them to pet, and like kind of
I'm
doing
the same way.
right. I'm like, just give me a minute. Just let me get to know you. Jeez, so personable, but that's just what you need, and it's just give them a chance, don't force yourself on them. Let them figure it out and let them come to you, and I think that's one of the main things is so many people want it now. They want the bond with their dog immediately. Like, they want the connection, like, okay, I rescued you, now we're BFFs. And the dog's like, who the hell are you? Like, where are we? Type of a thing. So it's like, they just got to give them a chance. I think that's just what all rescue dogs need, is just an opportunity to show themselves, to the people.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a pretty strong passion. When people are like passionate about rescue, it's definitely like a very deep set one.
Yeah.
And so for people, like, do you like people to be able to know that you rescue? Like, do you like people to know that that's how you got your dogs? That's what you decide to do?
Yep. Very, very vocal about it. Probably a little too vocal. But that's what I love about the Best Life is it's like the 2 stripes. It's right there in your face. This is promoting rescue. this is what you got to do type of a thing. Support the animals in the shelters, you know, get out there, find your best friend. Like they're just waiting. So many people have their best friend just waiting in a kennel somewhere, you know, just hoping that this person comes along at the right time, you know. And it's just, that's just what they need.
That's all they need.
You know, but I love
And
promoting that, you know, and just, and the, you know, the best life motto, the whole, you know, thing that you guys have built it on is just amazing, you know, promoting rescue and, you know, putting rescue out in a positive light. So many people see, you know, rescue dogs as, oh, they have behavior issues, or, oh, you don't know what you're getting. And it's like, no, you don't. You could get something with, you know, a pup that maybe needs a little tweaking or a little fix, or you could get a freaking badass dog that's ready to go from the get-go, and you've got your partner, you know, give them a little bit to figure things out, and, you know, look what you got. You got a match made in heaven, you
yeah,
know?
I would always kind of tell people it's kind of the same thing. If you don't research the breeder, you don't know what you're getting. So it's the
Exactly.
exact same thing. You might as well just go rescue, you know, get a puppy from the rescue.
Exactly. I'm like, I know the general, you know, I'm definitely a bully person. That's, you know, everything about bullies, the personality, the body type, you know, everything about them, that's me. You know, some people have something more towards, you know, herdy dogs or, you know, shepherd type dogs. I'm like, that's great. That's a lot of hair to clean up. Good for you. Have fun with that, you know? But it's like, that's the thing. Everybody has their own likes. And so for me, I know a bully, I'm going to get the bully, whatever it is. And I know that I can work with whatever's presented, you know, it's just, but I know that there's a core personality or a core basis to the breed that I'm like, yes, I like that, you know, because for the most part, bullies are super forgiving. They're funny as hell. You know, they're
Loyal.
so sweet. Yeah, extremely loyal. I mean, Maisie's my dog. There is nobody that's coming between us. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah, you're nice, but this is my mom. My mom
It's
is
my mama.
exactly. I'm a mama's girl, you know? So
That's
it's like,
awesome.
that's something, you know, in the breed that I like. So that's why I get it, you know, but
Yeah.
like you said, you know what you're getting into just in breed wise. And if
Yeah.
you don't know the breeder, then you might as well just go to a shelter and get
It's
whatever kind you like.
cheaper.
Just spend the $5 later. But,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it'll happen. No,
but
usually any dog, you know.
I know.
And you mentioned the two white stripes
Yeah.
being the symbol for rescue dogs. What do you think having the two white stripes as a symbol for rescue dogs will do for the world of dog rescue?
It'll just promote them in a good light, you know, where you see it and it's not something where you're like, ooh, where it's like, oh, sweet, where'd you get your dog? Like, what shelter did it come from? Like, what rescue did you work with? You know, that type of a thing where it's, you know, kind of like it instigates a conversation on like where your dog came from. Like, what's your, you know, what shelter? Like, you know, and you get to tell the little history, like, oh, I don't know where they came from, but I adopted them on this day and she was so quiet, but now we love each other, you know, that type of a thing. And it, you know, people love talking about their dogs. So if you give them, you know, like a little conversation starter, you know, you're opening doors, you're making friends, everybody's happy, the dogs are getting pets or not pets, you know, whatever you want. It's everybody, you know, it's just a great like conversation starter and just a point of reference, you know, that you can like kind of get behind, you know, and it points it out where you don't have to be like, yeah, my dog's rescue. You're like, uh-huh, see the two straps? Rescue. Yeah. You
Don't
know?
even have to say anything.
You know what that means.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and stop recording here.
Oh
Did you
wow,
have
that was
anything?
fun.
Right? Yeah. No. See, it's all fun. Like I